Hey there, baseball fans. Nathan Rohde and Les Lukach here, bringing coffee and curveballs back, kicking off 2022 with coverage of the preseason All-State Showcase in California. Les, you had 2 days of a great event at J. Sarah High School to really kind of kick off the spring coverage for us.
Yeah, man, we started with an underclass event on Saturday, an upper class event on Sunday. We roll right into MLK weekend, which is kind of the unofficial kickoff to the high school season here in SoCal. And it's just a great way to kind of build and add to our follow list for the spring.
hmm Yeah, it certainly is. So let's jump in talking some highlights. Starting off with that upper class portion on that Sunday of the event with shortstop Will Burns, who's the number 18 prospect in that 2023 class, still currently uncommitted. Sounds like he's a QB1, so maybe that's a little bit of a factor, but it was my first in person look at him, and man, oh man, was he impressive. Like, barrels on everything in BP. I actually think it was 100% hard hit rate from TrackMan, which was impressive. But smooth swing, this guy. I mean, you talk about looking the part. This guy does.
Yeah, we've seen the juice from Burns quite a bit over the spring seasons when he was playing at Mission Viejo. He's transferred since then to Turbico Hills, but we've seen the power, and we're kind of sitting there in BP, and he's hitting a couple, and we're like, all right, when's he going to lay into it? And sure enough, the last two balls, he clears the left field fence by gosh, 50, 60 feet each one, man. But it's easy power, right? And it's the bat speed and the hand speed. But I mean, he's just an impressive overall athlete. I mean, he started with a 6'6",
Mhm.
60. The hands at short are about as good as they come. Slick fielding shortstop, and he's definitely has the opportunity to stay there. We've talked about him quite a bit, but getting this look, which is basically his first kind of action since the end of football season, where he led his team to the playoffs there as the quarterback for Tribuco Hills, and he's going to have a big decision. I chatted with him about it a little bit after the event. He's looking to potentially do both in college if
Mhm.
that opportunity presents itself, but he has a firm understanding that baseball is most likely in his future.
Mhm. Excellent. And pretty much right behind him in every category when it comes to that BP and the TrackMan data that we have, and you can check out at prepbaseballreport.com, was Luke Scherrer, a catcher behind the plate. When I'm sitting there with you, you're getting pop times, I was getting the velos, and I didn't have my notes with me, and I'm just looking at the numbers, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, this guy is really chucking it down a second. Well, it was Luke Scherrer, but his BP round was also just as impressive, just absolutely murdering baseballs to the pull side, just like Burns was.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a couple 100-mile exit velos there for Luke, and what really impressed me with Luke, having not seen him since the summer, is just how physical he's gotten. I mean, he's starting to look like
Mhm.
a professional baseball player, right? The square shoulders, the kind of chiseled frame there. But you're right. I mean, the bat is going to play at any level, I think, and we saw his catch and throw ability was some of the best we saw. I mean, he was a 198 pop, I believe, was his best, and it's on the bag. It's 82 miles an hour from behind the plate, and he's just continues to grow from when we had him a couple years ago at the Future Games, where he was somewhat of an unknown. Now Cal
Mhm.
Poly is going to probably have an issue on their hands come next summer because Luke is arguably one of the best catchers in Southern California, if not all the state in this class.
Certainly. So, and going into this event, some of these guys are new for me, and I'm looking down the names and seeing who's committed and where. I see a name like shortstop Adrian Lopez. I see Long Beach State, and I'm like, already got in my mind. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a SoCal shortstop, dirt ball grinder, smaller guy. No, this guy is big and physical, and Blair Field, I don't think is going to be able to contain him.
You're right, man. I hadn't seen him, and it's been, gosh, probably since last spring. And you're right. I mean, he is big, 6'2", I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood, about a buck 85, a buck 90, and it's not a sloppy buck 90. It's pretty strong, and it's just easy
Mhm.
power off the bat to left field, like you said there. But I was really impressed with his defense, man. I mean, he showed the ability to be able to potentially stay at short, and if that doesn't work out, you slide him over to third. You got a pretty good bat at third base at Blair Field, but he's got a chance to be really good on a really good Maranatha team this year. He showed some quick hands, good barrel awareness, the ability to manipulate the barrel in the zone. We had a left-handed BP thrower, it was pretty steep downhill, and guys are coming out of the box like, wow, what's going on here? But Adrian had no problem handling that and was showed a really good gap to gap approach, but then that pull side power kind of came into play late in his round.
Indeed. Shifting over to that underclass side, seeing those guys on Saturday. The first guy I want to bring up is Easton Hawk, who showed us some legit two-way ability. Looked pretty good on the mound, some upside there. But for me, the most intriguing part was his BP round. He stepped in there with a wood bat and probably would have been the leader in all categories if he would been using a metal bat. But not only was he swinging wood, but he was handling it well with the
Yeah.
barrel control, and everything was loud off the barrel. Very impressive right-handed hitter.
Yeah, I think it was after his second swing, I looked up, I said, "Is he swinging wood?" And everybody's like, "Yes." And, sure enough, it's that gap to gap approach like you talked about. But man, there was some juice there at the end of his round too, especially
Mhm.
to the pull side. And, all the credit goes to Joey Cohen, who works for us down in San Diego, who, identified him about a month ago at a game and said, "You got to have him there." And sure enough, Easton came out and, I mean, on the mound was up to 87, really impressive. But the barrel was good too. He worked out at third and short, showed the ability to handle both. Potentially probably slides over to third given his size. But he's going to be a pretty good one at Granada Hills Charter. He's definitely going to be a high follow come the spring because of his two-way ability. And I mean, right now it was hard for me to decide where did I like him more, either on the mound or at the plate, because like you said, his ability to handle the wood bat was really impressive. I think he was the only guy at the underclass event that swung a wood bat. But then he hopped on the mound and just opened eyes, touching 87, living 85, 86, sharp slider, pretty good feel for the changeup. So, I mean, that's a guy that, coaches are going to want to know about here soon out of Granada Hills Charter.
Yeah, for sure. And when we talk about SoCal, obviously just littered with talent. You can find a prospect falling out of trees just about around every corner. But certainly are a select few programs that just churn out guys year after year. They don't rebuild, they reload. Huntington Beach is one of them, and Nathan Aceves from there is a right-hander, tall and projectable, pretty good looking arm for the Oilers.
Yeah, the thing that impressed me most about Nathan is we had him at our underclass games at USD a couple of months ago, and we're already seeing a little tick up in the velo, which is good. 6'3" frame, about a buck 75, so plenty of room to fill that frame out. But it's his ability to control, his pitches and command those pitches inside the zone. We saw it in a gameplay portion at the underclass games, and then we saw it in a bullpen session here this weekend. And he's a guy who just kind of keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. He's gonna have a hard time finding innings over at Huntington Beach, given their depth on the mound. But he's already a guy that's in the mix there, so that bodes really well for a sophomore on a staff that's really senior laden.
Yeah, and then after Aceves, we've got Andrew Johnson, who's a future games along. Another tall, projectable guy. Sounds like a repeating theme we had with those last arms that really wrapped up. But he didn't really show it consistently in the bullpen. But it's January; we'll give him a pass on that. But that breaking ball looked pretty sharp at times, and obviously that fastball is only going to get better down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. He was more consistent with the velocity on the fastball, sitting 85 pretty regularly, 84, 85. Whereas future games it was more 82, 84, touching a five occasionally. But you're right, the breaking ball, we saw a good glimpse of that at the future games, and we've seen it here through the fall, some of the games we've seen him at. But the breaking ball is definitely very projectable, above average pitch potentially by the time he's all said and done as a senior. And you're right that velo is going to tick up, and it's going to continue to tick up. Good frame, 6'1", 6'2" ish, about a buck 75, buck 80. So he's got an opportunity to throw on, another 15, 20 pounds by the time he's a senior. Only a sophomore, on
Mhm.
varsity last year, got some innings at Capo Valley Christian, and he'll be one of their frontline guys this year on what is, a really good team down there for Coach Bonilla. But Johnson, I mean, the upside is definitely there on the mound. He did show some feel for the changeup too. There's word that he's working on a cutter as well. So I mean, he's trying to add to his arsenal while he's developing, which is good. But it's the work ethic that I really like. I mean, he continues to work and just get better and better. So he's a guy again in the 24 class. Coach is looking for a right-handed pitcher. I mean, that's a guy out of SoCal that has faced really good competition both during the fall and during the spring and during the summer, and it's only going to continue to get better for him as well.
Indeed. And let's wrap things up here with Maximo Martinez. He was a guy that stood out in BP for me, with that loose swing impact on the barrel. And then he jumps on the mound, and velo wise, he was right there with those other guys we were just talking about.
Yeah, he was kind of like an unknown, if you will, right? I mean, I talked to Coach Ramsey a little bit about it one of his other players that was at the event, and he, he mentioned Maximo. He said, you're probably going to like him, and he kind of left it at that. And sure enough, he comes out and he has a really good round of BP, and he showed well defensively. But when he hopped on the mound, man, it's an easy loose arm, touching 87. Sat 85, 86 for his bullpen. Good sharp slider at 73, 75. You talked about him at the plate. I mean, he had an average exit velo of 88 miles per hour with the gap to gap approach. So, a lot to like. Legit two-way guy in high school for sure at Miracosta. Potentially, depending on where he develops on the mound, that could extend into college for him as well.
Excellent. Well, there you have it. A look at the preseason All-State Showcase underclass and upperclass from California. So be sure to check out prepbaseballreport.com for plenty more coverage of the event to come along in the coming days and weeks. But Les, thanks for joining us today. And as always, for Les Lukach, I'm Nathan Rohde. This was Coffee and Curveballs. And until next time, we'll see you guys at the ballpark.